Thank you. I have a very tough act to follow. He's got slides, and he was my senior at Oxford, and as you notice, he addresses me as Justin, not Dato Justin. So anyway, thank you very much indeed, all of you, for showing up on a Saturday morning to come and listen to me drone on about goodness knows what. I think the very fact that all of you are in this room is definitely the first sign that there is a certain level of interest in globalizing Malaysia and where our next economic steps may lie. Obviously, Omar paints a very bleak picture, or maybe sets the scene for what is the task and the challenge ahead of all of us. But I think it's always too easy sometimes to be too down on Malaysia, and a lot of people will tell me and will say that the Malaysia Boleh spirit is dead. And I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think it's maybe just in hibernation for a little while. But let me set the broad scene of the things that I'd like to talk about and to address this morning, and then very much look forward to go into Q&A with all of you later on today. And I think that's the main objective of today, rather than have me talk too long. But I think, and this won't be a surprise to any of you, but globalization is inevitable. You can try and resist it as much as you want. Those of you who have children can not give them a mobile phone for as long as you like, can not allow them to access the internet or use email for as long as you like. But as far as I'm aware, the average age of internet users around the world, and indeed SMS users around the world, it's hitting a younger and younger demographic. So globalization is inevitable. Is it good? Is it bad? I think that still remains to be seen. And for all the people that said that free flow of capital is good and unfettered free flow of capital is positive, I think you only have to look around you to see today that China, which followed a very, very different model of development, and in fact was not a participant in globalization until recently, and clearly now obviously is one of those leading it, but still is a very protected economy because of the size of China. They've actually done extremely well by resisting certain parts of globalization until they were ready to take part in globalization on grounds that they were comfortable with. And I'll come back to that point. That is very important, that each country has to do it at their own pace and on grounds and terms that they are comfortable with. But let's say that it is inevitable. The speed of change and the flow of information continues to move at an extremely rapid pace. I don't know about all of you, but when we talk about globalization, I think that's one area which really is that's in free flow mode already, right? I think you all know that. You all have your BlackBerries and your emails and the internet blogging and whatnot. 5 years ago, you wouldn't have had people write about Omar next to me. But I think that's something which is not exactly unhealthy, as long as you work out a way of how to filter and interpret this deluge of information. And if any of you have worked it out yet, I'd love to spend some time with you, because I haven't quite yet. I'm still struggling with the flow of information that I get from everywhere now. I don't know how much of you spend your time on Facebook or Twitter or email, Yahoo, work email, SMS, BlackBerry Messenger. But clearly that flow of information is very important, and to filter from that what you deem as relevant to your lives. Globalization has also resulted in the free flow of almost everything, not just goods and services, but also of labor in terms of human capital, and especially in terms of finance. And as Omar set me up to talk about investments, I'll obviously talk a bit about that later on as well. But I think the interesting thing is that the crisis that the world has gone through over the last 12 to 18 months is we're at a very interesting point in time of, I would say, even the history of capitalism, engendered by the last 12 to 18 months. Omar mentioned a few countries that have risen very fast, and where qualities and standards of living have improved dramatically. But I think sometimes when you look at the balance sheet of those countries and work out how they actually done this, a lot of them might have raised the levels of their borrowings, the country's borrowings, external debt, to a level that is actually unsustainable. If you look, and I know Greece was mentioned, but Greece is obviously at the moment a very big test case for the European Union. They basically just borrowed too much money and then lied about it. So they thought that the GDP deficit was 6%, and actually the new government came in and said, sorry guys, it's 12%. And so actually they potentially put at risk this whole concept of the European Monetary Union and the EU currency, because how they handle this Greek situation is going to be very interesting. So how each country has done it is interesting, and it's not. I mean, the numbers that show rapid growth only show maybe one side of the story. So we've got to be aware of that overall rounded picture. By the way, if you talk to a Slovakian or a Croatian or whatever, they may not think that they're doing better than Malaysia. They probably have a lot of their own gripes and vices as well. So I think do bear in mind that this crisis is extremely important, and how we as a country use it and use our position within this crisis is also extremely important. Malaysia was actually very fortunate. I'm again very lucky to travel a lot around the world in my job, and to meet a lot of people and to go to a lot of countries. I've been spending a lot of time in the United States of America and in the UK. And clearly, those are countries that are severely indebted. Sure, they've grown at a very rapid pace over the last 10 years, but they've really borrowed a lot from the future in order to pay for that growth that they've had in the last decade. And really, I think in the words of, I think, many commentators, this crisis is what you will see, that there is a big shift going on, and it's been going on anyway, but the crisis will accelerate the shift and the movement. I wouldn't call it the center of the earth, because the US is still the largest economy in the world and still 3 times larger than China. But the nexus has moved and is moving faster towards Asia. We clearly sit right in the middle of this as a country. Like it or not, we do. This is just where we're located. So the question is how we as a country and as a people look to try and take advantage of this and see what we can do. We've actually become, believe it or not, in the last 12 months, or actually in the last 6 months, less protectionist than many of the other countries. So the recent announcements by the Prime Minister's office, where they got rid of the NEP rule, they got rid of the Foreign Investment Committee, we've actually become less protectionist when the world has actually moved towards more protectionism. So I'm sure you will read that in papers every day, and I don't think Malaysia's been given enough credit about it, because most people that I talk to, and especially the international media, always come back and say that, well, yeah, you still have X, Y, Z, A, B, C to do. But yes, but what has the US and China done? They've become a lot more protectionist because they're trying to protect industries. Ask yourself this is funny, ask yourself, who is the largest owner of the US automotive industry? Who is the largest owner of the US banking industry? This was the very country that told us all that it was wrong, that the model of growth that we were pursuing was wrong, that the government should not be in the private sector, the government should not be shareholders in Proton and CIMB and the banking sector. And it just shows that when push comes to shove, every government has to look after its own interests and its own territorial interests for the sake of its own people. So I think that's important to bear in mind. We have become less protectionist as the United States of America has actually become more protectionist. And they're the people that have always asked for more free trade agreements, but free trade agreements in their favor. And it's very interesting when you look at the dynamic between, you can't compare Malaysia to the US, but if you look at a China versus a US, if you look at a lot of the dialogue that's going on now, China's just standing its ground and saying, look, for everything that you, America, want in China, we want it too. You guys want to buy into our banks, to take over our banks. We want to be able to export shoes free of tariffs to your country. And so, I think that this is something that Malaysia has to look upon, and we have not got enough credit, I think, in the international circles for, in fact, becoming less protectionist.